mlaleli wami, ngwethulela udaba oluthulwe ngesingisi. Wenza sure ukuthi-ke uyawaqaphela amagama, kodwa ngeke ukulisummarize kancane noma ukwethula nje isihloko sodaba engilethelwa lona namhlanje. Usisi washada eminyakeni yakhe esamusha. Indoda yakhe kwakuklenya ukuthi ishonile. Indoda kwakuyeyakwelinye izwe lingaphandle kwase-South Africa, kodwa lase-Afrika. Kwakuklenya ukuthi ishonile kangangokuthi yaze yangcwatshwa indoda. Umkayo wazi ukuthi ishonile yangcwatshelwa ngale emakhaya. Kuyaba ingane iyakhula yazi ukuthi ubaba wayo washona. Uma ngabe-ke ikhula ingane isithi sifuna ukufunda endaweni noma la kuzalelwe khona ubaba wayo. So ingane uma ifika ngale ithola ukuthi ubaba wayo uyaphila, and ukuphila kwakhe akukhombisa ukuthi akayazi, nomndeni wakhe ngale uyamphiwa, ukhomba ukuthi washona. Kanti ubaba ngale wayeshadile enayo yonke into right ngale. Mangabe-ke uqhubeka istory uyachaza ubaba ukuthi kungani wagcina ethatha isinqumo sokuthi efake ukuthi ushonile. Okay, ngale ukuchaza kakhulu ngithi angisummarize nje ukuze nawe mhlawumbe uthi ungena kuyona noma unga-understand esingesini, kodwa-ke kube ukuthi usucoshelile. Enza into elula-ke njengamanje, press subscribe button mawuthi bungakayipress, ebese wenza sure ukuthi uyayilike ivideo, ebese uyalinda ivideo iziphele, ebese uyakhomenta nge-understanding yakho ukuthi ngempela le nto iyiqiniso kangakanani. Ozothula istory-ke umuntu othulelwe istory, akusiyena umnikazi westory. Nasi istory sakho mlaleli wami.
Whilst you're thinking you're living the most perfect life and then a disaster happens, while you're still in shock of this disaster, you also realize that that seemingly perfect life was all a lie. And this is Anonymous' story. So let me take you a few years back. I got married in my early 20s, and when my husband and I started out, we had nothing. We both built and we grew up until to a level where we were comfortable but also living this perfect life. 5 years into our marriage, we then have a daughter. Our daughter became the light of our life. She was daddy's little princess and she was mommy's little princess. On her 6th birthday though, her dad passes. There was a freak accident that happened at work and my husband lost his life. Only his body remains were discovered and tests were done, investigations were done to make sure that it was him, and it was proven that it was him. So I never got to see the body because it was burned beyond recognition. But because the test had proven that this was my husband's remains, that is where I found my closure, that indeed he had passed. Now this was very devastating and I didn't know what I was going to do, not having my best friend, my soulmate anymore, and also having to raise a child by myself. I think the preparation of his funeral was one of the most painful things I ever had to plan. I had long, endless nights because I couldn't sleep. There was the devastation of his passing. There was the mourning. There was a whole funeral where we honored his life and we buried him. I quickly had to start putting myself back together for the sake of my daughter. I found a way to navigate through life as a single mom and as a widow. As hard as it was, I made sure that my daughter and myself, we were still going to be okay. Now let's fast forward to now, which is 12 years later, and my daughter is 18. My daughter has always been curious about her family history, and because her dad was originally from Botswana, she wanted to go study at the University of Botswana. She also wanted her father's legacy to continue of being a geologist, so she went at the beginning of the year to go study geology at the University of Botswana. So a few months back, I get a call from my daughter, and she didn't sound okay on this call, so I knew something was up. She says to me, "Mom, I don't know if I'm going crazy. As much as I don't fully remember Dad, but I think I saw a man in the parking lot with one of the professors who looks like my dad." So I'm like, no, that's not possible. Probably it is someone that looks like him. It probably could maybe be a distant relative that looks similar to him because he was from Botswana after all. But then she says, "Mom, there was just something about this man. I don't know. Can you please send me some pictures of Dad that are at the house?" Okay, so I'm like, you know what, fine. I send her the pictures and she calls me back and she says, "Mom, this was the man I saw today. He was a little bit older, but this was the man I saw." So I start getting upset saying, "Ba, can you stop what you're saying and all these assumptions or misidentity that you are doing, because I am still grieving, my husband. Yes, it's been 12 years, but this is still painful. So I don't know, why do you want to dig into this? Now, one thing about my daughter, she will not leave anything hanging until she gets to the bottom of it. A few days later, she then sends me a picture, almost like a side profile of a picture from the parking lot with another woman, and I got chills, because as I looked at this picture, this looked like my dead husband. So I then tell her, is it possible for the weekend? Can she come back to South Africa? And let's figure out what's going on. But it can't be it. So truly, my daughter arrives in South Africa and she tells me that this man, she's seen him now like 6 times on campus, picking up or talking in the parking lot with one of her professors. And her professor is married and they have 2 older children and one that has to be like in primary school. She then opens up her laptop. She decides to go search for the professor on Facebook, but she doesn't find anything. Prof doesn't post a lot of things. There's basically nothing that can, like, where she's with her husband or with her children or whatever. But then there's a post where it happens where she was tagged into that post, and it was her daughter tagging her mom on her post that was during a wedding reception. So my daughter then goes into the profile of this girl and she checks, and there was my husband in a family photo of him. There is his daughter, there's the wife, there is the seemingly the husband of the daughter, there's another gentleman which we assume is one of the kids as well, and then there's a little boy. No, man, we decide to scroll, like we're both in shock, and I think my daughter is more shocked because I'm extremely shocked. And we scroll, and then there's a video. In this video, this man is speaking. He's having a speech, and he is saying just his gratitude for the people that came to support him and his family and his daughter during such a big day. The voice was my husband. I lived for many years with this man. There was no way that this was not him. So my daughter and I go down in this rabbit hole trying to figure out, and I tell her that she might not remember, but your dad had a cut in his hand, that he got an accident when he was doing something many years ago. Now, if we find the scar, then definitely this man is my husband. And there happened to be another picture, and the scar was there. Seeing that scar, ndaphelelwa ngamandla, because how is it that I buried my husband 12 years ago, and all of a sudden he's here alive in another country with a different family? I told my daughter, let's just stop this, and she wanted, and I said, I can't right now. I got up from where I was sitting and I went into my bedroom and I started calling his family members. Now, I started sounding very crazy to the family when I started asking, Ukuba, is it by any chance that their son was still alive? His aunt who raised him, who was basically like a mother to him, said there's absolutely no way that he's alive. We buried him. You were there, I was there. And there were forensic investigations that proved that the remains was his. He's dead. So I say, Auntie, I hear you, Lendutitayo. I know what happened, but this is what I had discovered. I then first sent her the picture that my daughter sent me from the parking lot. She calls back and she says, no, it can't be, because this person does actually look like him. And I say, you see, I'm not going insane, but there is more. So now myself, my daughter, his family members, sonke, we are in disbelief and we are in shock. So I then ask her, who is the family that is still eBotswana? Maybe they can have a different answer, but why would he then die and all of a sudden rises and is alive at Botswana. I didn't want to believe that my husband had faked his own death. From all these people that I've known in my whole entire life, that man was honorable and he was honest. He would never do this to me. And he would never do this to his daughter. Not his daughter. Auntie then says, Ukuba, there isn't necessarily people in their family that she still knows that are there. There might be, but then there is no connection or any form of relationship that's happening. The family scattered and it is what it is. I get this is when me and my daughter went back to Botswana. Because one thing that's not going to happen, I'm not going to go insane as if I'm not seeing all of this and we are just making these things up. So I then went to my child's school and I requested to see the professor, of which we did meet. I wasn't sure how I was going to start this conversation, but I asked her about her husband, who might look like my late husband. And she was like, that's not possible. She has been married to this man for many years. Her older kids are 23 years of age. There was never a time where her husband ever lived in South Africa. He only used to come and do work and then he was back in Botswana. Now I had to think about the time that he would be away. There was never a time that my husband, when he was still alive, he would go to Botswana. So because the professor was so sure, Ukuba, I'm the one that is cuckoos and that her husband is actually her husband and cannot be my husband who had died. She said, okay, fine. She's okay if we can meet. She said, we must meet at this specific restaurant. We did. As we were waiting, it's myself, my daughter, and the professor. My husband then joins in. So as we walked into the restaurant, we were facing this way and he was coming from the back. So he obviously doesn't see anything. He knows that he's meeting people, but he doesn't know who. Uyafika ubuti, he greets his wife and then turns to greet us. The cold shock on his face when he saw us. I think he could recognize me. He couldn't recognize his daughter. As I looked at his man, as shocked as he was, I knew that this was my husband. This is the man I had thought I had buried. So he quickly wanted to move and leave, and then I got up and I pushed him back. And this is when his wife then says, what's going on here? I then look at her and I tell her, this is my husband that I had thought is dead. And as you can see how shocked he is, he knows exactly who I'm talking about. He then says, okay, let's sit down. I guess it has come to this right now. Therefore, he might as well talk. He tells us this horrifying truth of him living a double life for years. That he had to leave South Africa and it had to be like he had died. Otherwise, very dangerous people were going to find him, and if they had found him or they knew that he was still alive, those people were going to come after me and my daughter. He didn't have many options. Now there's a lot of very sensitive information that I can't share in this story of why and who these people were that are after him. So he has been in hiding in Botswana for the past 12 years. And as his wife would know, he hardly does anything. In fact, he doesn't leave Botswana whatsoever. The wife is shocked. I'm shocked. My daughter is crying. It's just a mess and it's a lot. So not only was my husband married to me, he was also married to someone else who he had married before me. But his family doesn't even know about this other family that he has at Botswana. And that wife also doesn't know that he actually has a family in South Africa and that he was married or actually is married to me. He asked us to leave the restaurant as there was still more that he needed to share with us. We then went to their house and he called his other children as well. So the older children, they arrive, this information is given to them, they shock. We are all like literally just listening to him. I was outraged. This is when I lost it. Because after that pain of losing him and trying to move on and rebuild my life without him, only for him to show up from the woodworks 12 years later. And not only do I know that now he is alive and wasn't dead, but the fact that he has a whole wife and children elsewhere. Now, the shocking part is he wants me and my daughter to uproot our life from South Africa and come live in Botswana. But his family must not know that he's actually alive. He's sorry and he wants to make things work. Work how? How? It's been 2 months since this whole thing has happened. My daughter is struggling at school because this has impacted and affected her greatly. Now, I am still in love with my husband because I never stopped loving him. It's just that so I thought death did us part. I don't know what to do with the situation. Do I carry on with his deception and lies and be oblivious that he has another wife and children in Botswana, but also continue having a life with him and yes, uproot and move? The wife has made it very clear she wants nothing to do with this and that her life is not going to be disrupted because she didn't know anything about this. So she is going to go on and carry on the way her life was, because she doesn't know that she has a husband that had died in South Africa and now he is alive again and he has a wife and another child. Therefore, she does not recognize any of that, recognize me or recognize my child. And I don't blame her, but I want my husband back. So what do I do at this point? But that's the end from Anonymous. Finding out someone that you loved and who you had thought was dead is a huge emotional, devastating blow. It comes with a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, a lot of sense of betrayal. Of all of that is valid for Anonymous. And there's honestly no easy or quick way to fix this situation. However, I feel the decision Anonymous wants to make is going to be more detrimental than what she had thought was real on his passing. I don't see anything good coming out of this situation, and I just feel that she is setting up herself for more betrayal and more hurt. So, Kebondase Nizvel. Anonymous is in this situation. Her dead husband is not dead, he's alive, and he has another family, but he still wants to be in her life. And she wants to continue. What advice do you have for her and us?